Culture, the podcast, a weekly live show where we explore the power of culture and leadership in business. I'm Ryan McCarty.
And I'm George Rogers, and we go live every week to learn from each other and hear from other experts about how to effectively champion our team members and ourselves. So join us live every Wednesday on our social networks or subscribe. You can listen to Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Now, let's champion your culture.
Hey, what's going on? It's a Wednesday.
It is a Wednesday. You said what's going on. Every time we talk, I feel like there's always something going on. Like you say something and it triggers a song in my head. What's going on? Yeah, it just popped in my head.
What's going on?
What is going on, everybody?
What's happening, y'all?
Welcome to Champion Your Culture, the podcast, sponsored by Culture Good, as always. Back and better than ever with the clever.
Number 64.
Number 64, episode 64. We want to thank y'all for sticking with us. There's been some faithful people that's been there since day one. We got a lot of day one people, and I always get excited.
Even in the moments where the whole thing just falls apart.
It falls apart. We're only there for 4 minutes. Sometimes we last long. Sometimes it's very short. But you got to get it. When you can get it, it lasts.
I've shot whole podcasts and didn't know it wasn't even live or recording. It's just out there in the universe.
It's out there somewhere.
Yeah, who knows?
But it happens. And y'all stick with us, and we're forever grateful for y'all joining with us every week. And I'm excited, man. Your smile is really energizing me this morning. I don't know if it's the coffee or whatever you had before. I picked you up this morning. We were just rolling around.
I know. I'm chill until the I need to keep my energy like stored up until this moment.
Gotcha.
Because if not, man, it's just another Wednesday.
Yeah.
This is not just another Wednesday, by the way.
What's special?
Well, we're going down to Louisville.
We're going south.
Zealandia,
a
wonderful organization that used to be in what did they used to be in? The work that they were doing before.
Oh, so Zealandia is the holding company.
Yeah.
And we went down to
timeshares. That's a word that was coming
we met with and certified 16 culture champions under their umbrella of the Latour Group. Now, we were saying LA Tour Group for a long time. And
I
we
literally thought they were from LA.
Yeah.
I was like, I kept looking up LA Tours or LA Tour, and everything was like, TMZ tours, in Hollywood, stuff like that. But Latour,
Latour is one of the companies underneath the Zealandia holding company.
That word, Zealandia.
And so like we were able to go. Their headquarters in Asheville, North Carolina. It was a castle building.
Unbelievable.
The gentleman that originally created the whole castle looking building.
Yeah. He was a sheep farmer from New Zealand.
And that's where Zealandia came from. New Zealand.
Made it big and made a bunch of money, I guess, selling sheep. Apparently, we got into the wrong business, man, because he came over and decided that because of the look of castles, he wanted to be a king or a prince, so he built himself a castle. That must be nice.
It must be nice. What's crazy is that he sold sheep, and we spent 15 to 20 years feeding sheep.
As pastors.
We were shepherding.
Exactly.
We were shepherding the sheep. We
got into the wrong shepherding.
We got into the wrong sheep business. It was the wrong part. We were trying to teach and lead when we should have been selling them off. I don't know if are we allowed to say that?
Yeah. We are allowed to say that.
The craziest stuff that happens in HR
or church
culture. Yeah, that'd be great.
For those that don't know, George and I we did a stint throughout our life as full-time pastors and in ministry and doing work all over the world and making an impact with our lives. So we know a lot about shepherding, not so much about actually making money from shepherding.
Yeah, there's not a lot in there. The funny story. So here in about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I'll be celebrating year number 19 total with the craziest woman ever. I don't know why she's still around.
How many weeks?
In 3 weeks. So October 8th is our anniversary.
All right.
Now
how many years? 18.
So total 19.
Wow.
So we had 19 years together earlier this month.
Yeah.
So we met in September of 2004.
Okay.
And we went on double dates with our parents because I was like not really, I was youth pastor, didn't want to bring somebody around my youth kids. I got a long relationship, and so it was.
You can't bring a new date every week to the kids.
Yeah, it's kind of different.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Hey kids, this is
not
my
saying I didn't go on a date. Joking, maybe.
Those kids didn't think anybody would date you.
Yeah.
They were just happy you found somebody, I would imagine.
Happy somebody stayed.
18 years, that's a long time, man.
And so, yeah.
18 years. You got one of your kids gone for 18 years.
Shout out to Easy. I don't know where he is right now, but
yeah,
he's out there paying some bills. But yeah, man. So it's just around the corner.
Yeah.
And awesome. I was just thinking, as we talked about a lot of things on this podcast, like we started shepherding at a young age and leading people. Like that's all I've known all my life. George, what are you good at? I've been in the tech world. I was in the tech space, and I wasn't really great at teching. I wasn't great at fixing phones at all. I mean, I was good, but it took time. And I was one of those people that I produced good things, but it was over time, right? Like some people's bread rises right away and it's good here in an hour. My bread take about 5 or 6 hours, but when you get it, it's gonna be good.
That's a difference between like a TV dinner and soul food.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like when I met Qatar's mom and she was talking about how she made her ribs and collard greens and hot water cornbread and man, and she was talking about it. I was like, Mama, Betty, what's the secret? And she said, I put my foot in it. Yeah. I'm like, listen.
Now, if you saw her feet, you wouldn't want to eat the. It threw you off for a little bit, right?
It means like I put my soul in it. That's where soul food comes from, right? Yeah, it's like you don't want to put your foot into a meal coming out of the microwave. Right. You don't even want to eat those things, man. Yeah, burn your whole mouth up.
Put my navel in that.
But seriously, it's good to see like, you know, what it takes to really do this kind of work, because having, to your point, like growing up, like with the assumption that we're supposed to be leaders, right? Like I never saw myself outside of a leadership capacity, even in my teen years. I was just, you know, because within those spaces, you talk to R&B singers or, you know, anybody back in the day, they're like, I grew up in the church. You know what I mean? I grew up in it. I learned leadership through it. I gained my understanding of the principles of leadership. That was a thing for me that I saw as a major disconnect. When I came into for-profit work, is like in the nonprofit space, it's almost like there's an assumption that everybody's a leader because you just need people to step up, maybe. Right. And so there's an understanding that anybody that comes in to that organization has the potential to contribute meaningfully, not just kind of fulfill a role or kind of go through the motions. And a lot of times within work, for profit, people are kind of a cog in a wheel. And I never really saw people as that in ministry or nonprofit work. So transitioning in that axis between nonprofit and for-profit work and leadership at the very core of it is what we talked about last week. If you were here with us, those that joined us last week, we talked about what it means to be a thoughtful leader, what it means to be thoughtful. And I think that really is what, you know, jokingly, as we talk about how it really didn't make a lot of financial sense. We, from a very early age, I know you and I, from a very early age, are just kind of thrust into leadership positions and given titles and given authority, and we had to learn leadership along the way. That's why I always tell people, like, I can give you authority, I can give you a title, and I can give you a position, but I can't just give you leadership. Leadership is developed, it's grown in someone. You're not born a leader, you're born with potential, and there's potential to lead there, but right, it's developed. And this is the beauty of being able to be together now, man, is like, what have you learned along the way? What did you miss? Because we both had different mentors and leaders along the way. And I know one of the things that was focused on quite a bit in the nonprofit space kind of leads into this conversation today, is like, how are the people doing? Right? How healthy is this organization? We talked a lot about the health of the organization in the nonprofit space. And the for-profit work, we have to be asking the same thing. You know, that's what we've been talking about, checking in with people, checking in with yourself. It's that movie, How Are the Kids Are All Right, or something, you know, how are the kids doing? You know, it's like after the pandemic and after all that we've been through, how well are people? You know?
taking that time to truly show that you care for people is important. We always talk about showing up.
Yeah.
And one of the things that kind of got me is that what happens when you show up, but you're not there, right? We're there, but we're not there physically.
Yeah.
I see presence, right?
Yeah.
I was asked this question, Ryan, and it was kind of personal. And we like to be vulnerable with our audience and get there. I was asked this question because I was talking to a young man who didn't know his father at all, never met him, right? And then his friend had a father.
Okay.
Horrible relationship.
Right.
And they said, George, what is better? What do you feel is better? And I knew what they were talking about.
Yeah,
is it good to have a man in your life that's there, but whether it's physical, verbal, mental, even emotionally abusive, right?
Right.
Or is it better to not have it? And I did this. I'm an analogy junkie.
Yeah.
All right. Or I'm just like, I'm literal. I got to see it.
Yeah.
Like this is how, and I describe it as having an arm, but not being able to use it.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather not have an arm than to have an arm that I cannot function. Right.
Yeah.
To have that weight, depending upon it, maybe I don't feel that weight, but I see it, but I can't use it, is more painful to me than just not to just cut it off at the shoulder. Right.
Right.
Because at least I know that it's not there and it's not functioning. I don't have a reminder every day of what could have been.
Yeah.
Right. Or what should have been.
Yeah.
In my life. So for me, I never met my birth father. I saw him once at a funeral. When I say never met, when I say meet, I never met. Like I know you, but I know your name.
Don't really. It's like being present, but not, or being somewhere, but not actually being there.
Yeah. And so I started a book. It was like a dream book about my life, right? It's called I Met Him, but I Don't Know His Name.
Yeah.
Right. So I met him, but I don't know who this man is.
Right.
And that's kind of the sense of showing up for people, like leaderships at the time, that stress. We talk about how leaders show up and the benefit for that for employees. We talk about bad leadership, good leadership, the influence and the impact that they have. And sometimes when we're talking about this simple fact, right, anxiety, we feel anxious. We're supposed to be there as leaders for people. Yeah. What happens when the leader is going through a struggle, mental health struggle, dealing with anxiety and the impact that has on the workplace? We have this mentality, and I'm saying this from experience. My desire is to be there for people, but I go through some stuff in life like we all do, right? And I struggle because my heart says show up, but my mind says I'm not there.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about digging into this because I feel there's a lot of experiences that we both had that we can share through our journey. Now, we'll say this and preface this: we're not experts, in this topic.
Yeah, I mean,
but
that's
we have
an important
experience.
thing. Yeah,
well, we have experience, and we've been counseled. Now we've gone to experts to help us get through some things. We've been coached through these things, and so we can speak from experience. Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of life, is that I want to give you true realities.
Right.
Of what it is. And so I know we've both been there.
And I think navigating, and what we're talking about today is navigating that axis between leadership and anxiety. Because as you were talking about, I think there was a spark with a conversation you had that sparked this conversation with us. Remember, there's like some business conversation you had about anxiety. What was that? You don't have to give specifics, but what was it that kind
of the organization? So what sparked this conversation, it was just the question of how do you deal and handle anxiety as a leader through the workplace, right? And a lot of our audience, especially on LinkedIn, a lot of our audience are in the HR space. A few weeks ago, last week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was in North Dakota. Shout out to North Dakota and the North Dakota State SHRM had me out there, 400 or 500 people. Beautiful, beautiful town, great people. I was blessed to be around some great leaders. That team was just phenomenal. Yeah, I want to come back. Even if they don't want me back, I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna show up. But it was a question that was raised in the workshop. Yeah, we do a workshop called RSVP. Yep. I don't want to give too much on what you're doing,
checking in. Yeah,
just checking in. Yeah, it's something that's coming out pretty soon here in the next year. Yep. That you're working on there, and we're working on together, and we're doing workshops about just checking in with people. When leaders don't check in with their employees eventually check out. Yep. And we're talking about that, and just the overwhelming feeling that, George, I always have to be what the title tells me how to be, what I need to be. Yeah. That's a struggle.
It's tough because there is a leadership face you put on.
Yeah.
We used to, back to the whole conversation about shepherding sheep, and in the heart of a shepherd as opposed to a cowboy. So this is the concept of a cowboy's driving the flock forward. You know what I'm saying? From behind, like with the stick. The shepherd's leading from out front. And the problem is that there used to be a statement we used to say back in the church world is shepherds don't bleed on the sheep. In other words, you want to make sure that as a leader that your people don't have to carry all of your issues. But how do you show up as a vulnerable leader? And how do you show up with anxiety? And how do you continue to lead in the midst of anxiety? I deal with this personally every single day. I'm on medication for anxiety. If I don't have my medication, it impacts, that day or the day after, whatever it is. And so it's really important for me to have consistent disciplines in my life that I know impact my anxiety in a way that lessens how that feels on a daily basis. So one of the first things I'm doing is ensuring that that as I'm feeling that anxiety, knowing that that's not something that is wrong. It's not something that is necessarily an issue. It could be an indicator to an issue, but anxiety itself is a protective mechanism, right? Like you think about, our ancestors, we've heard the stories, like if a saber-toothed tiger is coming behind you, you want to have some anxiety. Right? Like something needs to trigger inside of you that says, I don't know if this cat that's bigger than me and has teeth bigger than my head is a cool thing to hang out with. So I'm going to feel anxiety and I'm going to run for my life, or I'm going to hide, or whatever it is. And that's where we get into the flight, fight, freeze response. There's also the attachment response where we cling to what's going on or whatever it is. And that anxiety though could come from a myriad of different things, right? Childhood trauma. I know I've dealt with that myself, you as well. Many of you that are listening online are dealing with anxiety, and especially I think coming out of the pandemic, this is a mental health conversation. And it's a conversation that is important to have because the stigma behind that, I've heard leaders say, mental health doesn't matter. I've, people that have kind of discounted or lessened the impact of mental health within the workplace. And when we look at the realities of work, we also know that if I come anxious, if I come to work anxious, I'm carrying that with me. It impacts and influences my work and how I'm leading others. So how do you, George, show up anxious? Like when you're feeling anxiety at work, what's your go-to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, as you're talking about the saber-tooth tiger analogy, I'm gonna get to your question and I'll answer it if I remember. But I want to say this: I think of the innocence of a child. Like they don't, like when you're young, like you either have natural fear because you saw a mom or dad say, "Oh my gosh, a dog," right? I always was afraid of dogs and cats because my mom didn't like animals. Man, you brought a snake, and I'm talking maybe a worm. She a fly. You remember those days when?
She'll if your fly, mom's running from a worm, something's
she's
wrong.
Probably still in Hallville right now, running down Concord Street, St. Clair and Concord, just jetting it from all the stuff we did. But as a kid, you fear what you see others people fear. And then I saw a child the other day come over to my house, and it's funny. I got a golden doodle, and she's hyper. She likes to jump on you and wave, or she makes this weird look like she's about to bite you, and she's like, when she's smiling, like a pretty girl. We call it pretty girl smiling. She's just, she's weird, but it's scary to some kids because they don't know. The perception is, oh my, But I had this kid, a young girl, come over, and she like had no fear, no anxiety. It was like, I'm the boss. Like, you're nice to me. You will be like. Sometimes that childlike faith, that innocence and that purity where we may be feeling anxiety, that child just has it because there's no trauma there. We talked about childhood trauma. What led to a lot of my anxiety and what I do now when I have experiences, right? I get anxiety from small triggers. Health was an issue of mine, right? I have traumatic situations from losing my sister in November, things of that nature that just gives me high anxiety. when it comes to how I deal with it now, what I've learned is to, once I recognize why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, I have to breathe.
Yeah, return to your breath.
I have to because for me, for instance, the health scare, 10 years ago next month would be when I had my heart issue, right? And so whenever somebody else has a heart issue, since in the last 10 years, if you got something, you can have freaking COVID. I got COVID right away.
Yeah.
Like I'm just, I feel the symptoms right now.
Right,
like, I'm just like I have that anxiety to where if I'm around, it just triggers, that thought of what if, right?
Yeah.
Do I have that? Could I have that? Do I need to go get checked up? Right. And so I have to, if I don't get myself together, man, I feel like my heart just beats out of my chest. And so for me, the first step for me is to gather myself.
Yeah.
And I have to control my breath and my mindset.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the only thing that can do that is just to find peace.
Meditation.
No noise.
Yeah.
Right. And there's been moments where I'm in the middle of the night and I'm like, I'm breathing out and Amber's waking up. What is wrong with you? I'm like, I just got to breathe.
I know.
Now I can get out of bed and breathe. And then she's like, what in the world are you doing in the middle of the floor in the hallway? But I have to find myself.
There's times I breathe and Qatar's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing's wrong. I just need a breath.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I got to gather myself.
Gathering yourself.
And find peace.
Yeah. Right? And I know we do that sometimes when we're going on stage or about to do a workshop. We do that box breathing. You want to do that real quick with everybody on because this is a really easy technique to return to your breath, and I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's called box breathing, and essentially what you'll want to do is you want to inhale for 4 seconds, hold that then for 4, and then release or exhale for 4, and then hold the exhale after you've released all the air for 4. So you're kind of boxing the breath. Let's go through it just 2 times.
Okay.
All right. So everybody there, you don't have to close your eyes or anything unless you want to, but let's go ahead and just breathe in for 4 and hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4 and hold for 4. One more time. Breathe in for 4 and hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a reset button.
Yeah. I mean,
we talk about checking in, Ryan. We talk about, making sure we're doing all those things. We go to the doctor yearly to check in. That breathing for me, like just that moment right there, I just feel peace. I feel relaxed. I feel calm. It's like a reset button. Like even in technology, you got to reset your phone every once in a while, right?
Right.
Even our phones, our technology, we get software updates and reset. We have so many mental updates, so many things that come in our minds from the days that we live, right? The experiences, whether it's driving, somebody frustrates you, you just pulled out of your own housing edition, and already somebody's ticked you off because they cut you off mentally. Like resetting and starting that box breathing, doing it 4 times, typically four times to do that. It really is a good reset for you mentally. And so for people out there, and I'm specifically talking to men because I know how stubborn we can be. Like, I ain't doing that stuff. That's just stupid. But man, when I talk about self-care, it's not just about, mani-pedis, massages, all those other things that may relax you.
Right.
Getting on the water, getting on the boat or whatever it may be. Those are great things, but just that simplicity of just breathing and relaxing is beautiful.
I love doing that because you can do that at work.
Yeah.
This concept of leading through anxiety, there's a lot of reasons why to feel anxious at work. And I don't want to add anxiety to anybody that's on the podcast, but let's be real. There's a lot of uncertainty. One of the greatest concerns of employees right now is understaffing. The other is lack of clarity around change. So ambiguity, rapid changes that are happening. We hear that there's just rapid changes, and we're saying, all right, you need to check in with your people. How are people doing? Unclear expectations, or there can be just challenges, to your point. Like you get into a challenge and you're triggered a certain way. There's a lot of perceived worries about the future of work. I know there's been layoffs and people that have been let go. And when you have that happen within the workplace, that can trigger a lot of anxiety because you wonder if you're the next one on the chopping block. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's conflicts at work and with colleagues. And also as leaders, we have to realize that we're carrying a lot of weight. Right. They used to say that leadership is lonely. It's not because people don't like leaders. It's because not everybody will carry that kind of weight up that mountain. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of weight because you're not only carrying your own success and failure and the weight of that, you're also carrying the success and the failure of your team.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to recognize that leadership at the very beginning, when we're talking about leadership is not easy.
Yeah.
Demanding things of people's easy. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Delegating may not be as easy, but it's simpler. When you're leading, leadership is difficult. Being a leader, because at the very core of it, you can't lead others till you first lead yourself well.
Yeah.
So that's a key component, I think, to this idea of dealing with mental health, and specifically the concept and conversation around that anxiety that comes in.
Yeah.
It can come in like a flood.
Oh, man.
So it can come in a moment. And there's been a lot of times in my own life where I'd wake up in the morning and feel instant anxiety every single morning. And I attributed it to two things. And part of it is asking the question, Ryan, why are you feeling anxious?
Yeah.
Like, don't just feeling, but ask yourself. And sometimes you don't know the answer right away, but what I discovered is I would start to feel anxious, and I was always getting up early before the pandemic. I'd get up at like 5:30 in the morning, hit the gym. During the pandemic, I was like, I don't need to wake up at 5:30. Work isn't starting at 8 anyway. So I got in this mode of like sleep until 9. I would wake up totally full of anxiety, and I didn't know why. And I figured it out. Two reasons. My mom and dad used to insist that we would have to be up, dressed, and ready for the day, even on the weekends by 9 o'clock.
Before the sun.
Well, we couldn't wear pajamas after 9 o'clock. Yeah. So that
you hear that, Dexter? That dude, he got pajamas that look like clothes. I don't even know it.
But I couldn't even. I had forgotten about that. But just doing that internal work and asking myself and meditating and saying why. The other reason, my gut. They're finding a lot of studies between the gut brain axis, right? And how your gut health is attributed directly to anxiety, and how if we want to not rid necessarily ourselves, because we're always going to have anxious, it's a mechanism that's important for us to have, right? It's natural to feel anxious. As we said, if you have a saber-tooth tiger, or you go into like, if you and I were going to go into what's the movie with all the dinosaurs? Jurassic Park. If we were going to go visit Jurassic Park, we might feel a little anxiety going because of the uncertainty and everything else. But when you're dealing with everyday stressors and everyday pressure and and the anxiety of, all right, am I doing enough, to keep my job? Am I doing enough for my team to be successful? We've got all of this. Plus, I've got the anxiety of maybe financial stressors at home or a family member that's sick, to your point, right? So we've got home life. We're supposed to check all of our life at the door, come to work, be a strong leader, show up, lead our teams. Hey, Ryan's always happy. Everybody wants to be around Ryan because he's always there, and he's always excited. And we don't realize internally, I could be smiling on my face, but internally I could have that storm going on the inside of me. And I think the storm, anxiety, if we don't learn how to breathe, to meditate, there are some other people that gave some suggestions, doing a cold plunge or a cold shower in the morning. That does help.
Yeah.
I mentioned the gut health. It's important to know what we're eating and not just eating just to eat. That was a big part of us waking up and my gut was full of food because I was eating later at night. And I realized if I eat earlier in the day and don't eat that midnight
Yeah.
snack and all that stuff, watching Righteous
Yeah.
Gemstones on,
I mean, that's
on
another
HBO
trigger,
Max.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
the
yeah.
perception of time. Like when you are dealing with that anxiety, research shows that perception of time, you feel like it goes by faster, like you don't have enough time in the day to do what you're always
And that
supposed to do, and the
exasperates the
expectation,
anxiety.
and it just leads to more and more,
To
because
more
then
of
you
it.
feel like you're failing people, you're not getting your job done, you're not showing up
Right.
for your family.
Right.
So that perception of time really takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing, as I'm thinking of more things that I do. One of the things that I did, because the whole box breathing was beneficial and really helped change my perception and mindset when I was dealing with anxiety. The other thing I did is that I don't do the 4-4. I just do a small breathing in the morning before I leave the house, or I'm in my car before I pull out. And I do a breathing, just to breathe in, breathe out. I do a couple of times. And then the last time I speak a positive word on myself. So I'm giving myself affirmation, George, you are whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I'm speaking over myself. And then I speak one thing that I want to accomplish today. So I know the schedule. I know that I got meetings, I got calls, we got a podcast, we got travel.
Yeah.
But what's one thing George wants to accomplish today? So every day I do that. And what I've learned is accomplishing that one thing actually soothes that anxiety, because I feel like I've accomplished something. Now, I may not accomplish everything that I needed to, but that helped me. For me, time was an issue. When I dealt with anxiety, I just felt like, man, I don't have enough time for myself. I'm always doing everything for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
I was almost dead trying to serve people, and I couldn't serve myself. We talk a lot about that, and I want you to speak on it, because I feel like when I hear it from you, it impacts me. And I want people to understand the importance of self-care.
Yeah.
And how that helps you deal with anxiety as well. Like, it's important to not just lead people, George, right? This is something you always telling me in the beginning. In 2019, you reminded me how important it is to stop trying to lead everybody else. Lead yourself, care for yourself.
Yeah.
And you put me on a 12-week path, and I loved it. And it was so impactful to me. Can you share a little bit about the importance of self-care and how that can tie into anxiety as well? Because I think the people could benefit from that as well.
Yeah.
On leading yourself.
Well, the reality is every leader needs a leader. To your point earlier, if you're a leader, you're carrying a lot of the weight of your team.
Yeah.
Who's helping you carry your weight? So a part of self-care is reaching out to others, right? So self-care isn't just doing everything for yourself, but it is ensuring that you have everything that you need. So self-care starts with self-awareness. You have to be self-aware. You have to know yourself really well to lead yourself well. In other words, if I know you kind of, George, I kind of can lead you. Yeah. Right. If I kind of know your personality, kind of know what makes you tick, kind of know what gives you anxiety, kind of know what brings you life and joy, what's a fresh breath of air to you and what's going to feel too much for you, I can lead you better because I know you well.
Yeah.
The problem is we've not spent enough time with ourselves. We're spending time with us, but we're not actually there. Yeah. To your point. In other words, I can be with you, George, in a car, and we can be together and not actually be present together. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Have you ever ridden in a car and after about an hour, you realized you did the whole trip and you don't even know where you've been the whole time? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And life becomes that. Life becomes this, rather than a series of choices that we begin to say, this is how I'm going to lead my life moving forward. Yeah. Life becomes just a response to whatever happens to us. It's almost like we're in like neutral mode. We're just going through life. We're dealing with childhood trauma. We're pushing that off. We're trying to bury it. It's impacting all of our relationships, all of our work. We're not dealing with it. We're not spending time with us. And I think self-care starts with that self-awareness. It starts with saying, Ryan, who are you? Yeah. What do you really want? Where are you going? And who do you want to be when you get there? Yeah. How are you living intentionally, in other words? Yeah. It's very much similar to culture. Yeah. Culture's, we can define it, but it's also very mystical and kind of otherworldly. Yeah. So is your life. Mm-hmm. When you think about, are you alive or are you living? You know what I'm saying? Are you just breathing or are you breathing? Yeah. Are breaths coming in and out, or are you intentionally breathing? In other words, when you breathe intentionally, it does something different. When you lead yourself intentionally, it's different than just simply making decisions and choices and going through the motions of life.
Yeah.
And we can get into that, just going through the motions and kind of like locking in and doing our everyday and forgetting ourselves in the process, forgetting ourselves in the work, losing ourselves. As a matter of fact, I think sometimes we simply don't want to spend time with ourselves. So we fill our life with people and with things, and we're busy. Absolutely. And so it's really important to take a moment. And this is a good podcast to say, all right, a lot of our listeners maybe have been dealing with anxiety and don't know why. Well, start by asking yourself, and then also looking at your past and what are those triggers? What are the things? And for me, it took sitting down with a professional and having an opportunity to walk through the unpacking of some of that stuff. Because sometimes self-care isn't just breathing for yourself, or sometimes self-care is going to a therapist.
Yeah.
Self-care is reaching out to a friend or someone who is a little more knowledgeable than you or deals with anxiety as well. Listen, not all of us know how to do this very well. Yeah. It's not that I've got it figured out and I don't deal with anxiety anymore.
Yeah.
It's the difference between me dealing with anxiety and anxiety dealing with me.
Yeah.
Are you allowing anxiety to control and deal with you? Like, in other words, is it a visitor that comes in, unpacks its bags, and gets to spend as much time as it wants in your life? I heard a really good quote that said, if something's out of my hands, I shouldn't give it any space to stay in my mind.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it was something like that. It's paraphrased.
It's
they said it better, but it's like, I can't do anything about this. So why am I allowing it to, and part of it's not why am I allowing it? Part of it is anxiety follows pathways. So in order for your brain to work, your brain follows pathways, right? Your thinking, your consciousness, the way that your personality, the way that you remember things, your childhood trauma, all of that follows pathways. If your anxiety follows the same pathways and it doesn't have an exit, to be able to get off on, then what happens is that anxiety stays in rotation. What is really powerful is now we know that your brain has there's neuroplasticity, right? So your brain it's not just there, and as your fingernails grow, those neural pathways in your brain can grow. You know what I'm saying? What'd your mom tell you to drink to have strong fingernails?
Yeah, it's milk.
Milk, right? Yeah. And why? Because the calcium in it made your fingernails strong, and it made your, when you were younger, you'd start drinking milk, you start seeing your fingernails grow longer. You're like, oh, it's that way, right? It's like your body's still growing. You can still. You brought it up earlier. We're programmed a certain way to respond a certain way. Yeah. It's almost like robotic. And when we can become human again is when we rehumanize ourselves and we say, all right, what is it that I need to in my life, and how do I begin to create new pathways so that anxiety, when it's trying to get onto that roadway in my mind, it's met with an affirmation, right? It's met with that counseling session. It's met with that cold plunge. It's met with, it's met with those opportunities that we intentionally, it's met with that box breathing.
Yeah.
I think it's more like, let's live intentionally and not just allow whatever's going on inside of us to have control.
Yeah, it's that. So we talked about some things you mentioned a lot, and I just want to kind of point out some things. If you are leading through anxiety, or somebody that's going through anxiety, some things that stuck out so far. Number one, self-awareness. Yeah. Right. Being self-aware, recognizing, acknowledging your own anxieties. And if you're leading somebody who's dealing with that, help them understand what it is. Sometimes it's impossible to really find a solution if you don't know the issue, right?
Right.
If you are not really exposing, it's like the first step to realizing your problem is admitting you got a problem, right? Yeah. The first step to getting through those things is acknowledging the situation for what it is and not trying to put it off.
Yeah.
A lot of times we try to put it off and not acknowledge the realities that we're facing.
Yeah.
You gotta be self-aware. The other thing, we always talk about communication. Communication is a part of everything, but the key word that I heard from you without you saying it is transparency,
Mhm.
right? George, be transparent with what you're dealing with and with yourself. Yeah, you got to be real with yourself. You got to be able to communicate. And I know it sounds crazy. As a young kid and teenager, I was like, man, are you talking? We always used to clown people. You talking to yourself, bro?
Yeah.
But it's important as you get older, you realize sometimes you got to speak over yourself. There was an old gospel song my grandma always loved, speak over yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's important to speak life.
Yeah.
The reason why I have that breathing session in my house or in the car before I leave where I'm at, I want to be the first person that speaks life, right? Because if I don't know what's about to come my way, if somebody cusses me out, I don't want that to be the first word that goes through my mind.
Right.
I want to speak life to myself. So communicating those things. Another thing that I felt from you as you were talking was empathy.
Yeah.
Empathetic. When you talk about leading yourself, Ryan, and we talk about this a lot, leadership begins with self-leadership.
Yeah.
Right. The sum of our life is how well we lead ourselves, not others.
Yeah.
I can't lead Ryan to the mountaintop if I don't lead myself first. So in those same way I show you love, grace, and trust, I must show that for myself.
Yeah.
The same way I show empathy for others, I must show myself. You know how long it took me to show empathy for myself?
Oh, I know, man. I was about to bring that up. I'm glad you brought it up because
I was in my 30s before I realized that I got to be empathetic with myself.
Yeah, it's a self-grace, man.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, we do it for everybody else, but we don't take the time.
I get down on myself when I'm anxious.
Yeah.
You know what? Because it feels so childish sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, come on, Ryan.
It is simple.
You know what I'm saying, though? Sometimes I'm like, come on, Ryan.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not. But sometimes it's deep. Sometimes it's not simple. And sometimes the simple part becomes difficult. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when that happens, I'm always like, come on, get over it.
Yeah.
Or come on, man, move on. You know what I'm saying? Or try to detach or whatever else. And there are moments where self-care does require us to show a tremendous amount of grace, man, to ourselves.
Yeah.
And also grace to our team. You know, you mentioned like when someone on our team is facing anxiety, how do we show them grace if we've not shown ourselves grace first? Like if we, you know, you meet people like leaders that are like hustle, grind, and then their team has to be that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Why? Because how you lead yourself is how you lead others. That's just the reality of it. And so if you're not showing yourself grace, you can think you're giving people grace, but you're not.
Yeah.
You're not really showing people grace. You're not really loving people.
Yeah.
Like, do you really, really love you? And I think when we love ourselves, we have to love ourselves. I just want to add this to that point. We have to love ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly anxieties.
Yeah.
We have to love ourselves. And when we feel anxious, not to get down on ourselves.
Yeah.
Because anxiety then leads to depression. You know what I'm saying?
It becomes a mental health battle.
Well, yeah.
And that wellness. I mean,
it just all compounds.
It's really, it comes together.
Yeah, because depression's just waiting there for its own trigger.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so there's all kinds of connections between all of that. And so it might not be like, oh, just take a cold shower every day. You know what I'm saying? You know, it could be a multitude of things that you decide to do.
Yeah.
But I would say take a first step and be open and honest with yourself, and also open and honest with a friend or a professional, someone that you can trust, that has been trustworthy, you know, for 10 plus years, like someone that you can be vulnerable with and open with and say, you know, this is what I'm dealing with. Hopefully you all have a leader that shows up for you.
Yeah.
I think it's key to ensure that you're not just like walking through life without a leader in your life, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's a big
I'm over here running through acronyms in my head. Of the four, I mean, there's four of them, right? We said self-awareness, transparency, be empathetic, and then be productive. When I think about productivity, productive, and being productive, I think of it in this way. And you said it earlier, and it reminded me, like, control the controllables. If I can't control it, don't let it control me, and don't let it stress me out to the point, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the difference between proactive, reactive. It's that is your problems pushing you, or are you pushing your problems, right?
Yeah.
And understanding those things. But when I think about productivity, I think about the willingness. Great leaders all have this thing about them. They're able to adapt. You can put the adaptability. You can put a leader in a corner with a saber tiger, right? And they'll adapt. Power Ranger, whatever it may be.
Or they turn into food.
Right. And they transform.
Yeah, exactly.
But we adapt. Great leaders adapt.
Yeah.
No matter what the situation may be, no matter what they're facing, right? If we're laughing and having fun in here, and somebody comes in with a serious situation, our mood can adapt. We become very empathetic.
Yeah,
we can go from goofballs to very empathetic people, right? And leaders, we adapt. If there's a very sad situation and somebody needs some joy in their life, and we're having a very serious conversation, we can adapt our character, right, to fit that situation. Leaders adapt. That whole adaptability, and even in the workplace, when I think about adaptability, I want people to understand this: the message doesn't change, right? The core values, the 5 promises, that doesn't change.
Yeah,
right. How you get there, how you get on that journey. If I told you, hey, you're going to get $1 million by the end of the year, but I don't tell you how you're going to get it, right? You might have to go through some hell. You might have to go through some weeks of fasting. Like, there might be different temptations you got to do to get there. But if you get there, you're going to get $1 million. If I say I'm going to give you $1 million by the end of the year, a lot of people are going to sign up.
Yeah.
Some people are going to quit if they learn how they're going to get there to get to that $1 million because of that journey that they have to take.
Yeah.
You got to be able to adapt. The end game, the journey, my destination may not change.
Yeah.
Who I want to be when I get there. We talk about those 4 things, right? That adaptability to be productive.
Yeah,
when I say productive, I'm not saying busy work.
Right. Because productivity can cause anxiety too.
Yeah. You don't want to just be busy. You want to be productive. Yeah. By being productive, I mean, you have outcomes that you can see, that you can celebrate.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I say this is one thing I want to get done today. Right. Speak positivity over myself. George, you are kind.
Yeah.
George, you are enough. And today I want to accomplish X.
Yeah.
Right. When I accomplish X, that productivity, whatever happened in that day, I was able to adapt and I was able to still get that one thing done.
Right.
That was a victory for me.
Yeah.
That helped me.
So you're saying swallow those small or celebrate those small wins and recognize that.
Recognize them.
Yeah. Recognize yourself. Yeah. This is all the stuff that we teach leaders to do for their teams. We're saying, turn this back to yourself. Yeah. Practice recognition and reward. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Celebrate yourself. Give yourself that affirmation in the midst. And there's been moments where anxiety's just completely taken over my life. And it's in those moments again that I just want to reiterate. The first step in that process is getting professional help. Mm-hmm. If someone's dealing with anxiety and it's not something that they can just, like I said earlier, just kind of box breathe and settle, themselves or ground themselves. There's all kinds of techniques, right? Take your shoes and socks off and go out into the grass and feel the grass again. When's the last time you put your feet in the ground in the dirt, man? Yeah. So there's all kinds of stuff, but some of those feel more like techniques, and those are good. And those are things that we can implement. But if I just want to mention this, as George said at the beginning of the podcast, if you're facing anxiety where it's overwhelming, I mean, overwhelming to the point where you've tried intentionally to do what you can and still can't. I have faced that, and I've went to my doctor, a homeopathic doctor, and we tried some of the stuff that I had to start getting on was probiotics. Yeah. You know what I mean? Your gut health is important. Now I want to get back into all those details of that, but like we have to get very practical. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking about is like, how are you practical about this? Because there's a lot of emotion and things that are tied to that anxiety, but what are some practical, like how can you practically face anxiety? How can you practically go in, lead even when you're facing anxiety? And maybe you don't, maybe you rest, maybe you take that day off, maybe you need a mental health break for that day and you call in and say, I need a day. Like you need to, but again, if you don't know what you need, if you don't know yourself, it goes back to that, man. And so you have to start from a place. I know I do. I have to start from a place where I'm like, okay, Ryan, if I'm feeling a lot of anxiety and I'm having those rushes more and more, it's an indicator to me that I need to spend more time with myself. Yeah. I mean, it really is. It really is. And it's also an indicator to me that I need to not drink that pitcher of beer the night before. or whatever it is, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because whatever's in my gut health is impacting, and it really
Right.
does. The next day I feel it.
Yeah.
I really do feel it. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's me, man. That's me.
That's awesome. I'm interested, for those who are watching, if you would, in the chat, whatever platform you're on, how do you deal with anxiety when you're going through it, especially at work?
Yeah.
I believe, and I'll shout out to a lot of organizations and companies. Shout out to all the HR leaders and managers making it happen. But more than ever, we are seeing a lot of growth and attention and spotlight put on the importance of employees' well-being.
Yeah.
And mental health.
Yeah.
I know this is Suicide Awareness Month and the mental health and things of nature. And I just want to acknowledge those leaders that are out there, especially those who are following us and a part of the Champion Your Culture podcast network. We salute you. We celebrate you. Round of applause for bringing this awareness, making this normal. Like, this is normal. It's okay, right? It happens. We're just acknowledging it. Like, the mental health has always been a thing. We just didn't know what to label it.
Right.
Some people call it soft. Some people call it you're not made from the. I've heard you're not cut from the same cloth as a general. Like, the reality is, maybe I'm not cut from the same cloth, and I'm okay with that.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Some of those old claws need to be thrown away.
You know, there's some good things that we can keep from the past, but the reality is that I grew up not acknowledging. You know, I grew up as a man, you don't show emotion.
Right.
Right. First thing I remember my mom and my aunts and uncles telling me when I was crying, whether I was getting beat or I lost a fight or I was in a fight, was, we don't cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it taught me not to acknowledge my emotion.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we got a bunch of men that are built up, and women.
Women,
that are built up with emotions that they don't know how to deal with because we were never taught how to deal with them.
Well, we're also told not to deal with emotions at work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's the same thing as adults. We're treated like children.
Yeah.
It's like, what's up?
Leave your home stuff at home. Don't come here. When you get here, you got to work.
You got to stop being human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like, and you said this, man, and ever since I've heard you say this, you were speaking, we were doing a workshop. You can't separate life and work. It's life.
Yeah.
Right. There's no separate. There's no. I used to be, and I'm sorry to all my Genius Phone Repair employees. Sorry for everybody that I said, hey, leave this stuff at the threshold. We always used to, like, don't bring your life in here.
Yeah.
And I didn't really mean it because I cared about my team. I loved on them. But we were always taught to leave that at the door. The reality is, you can't leave that at the door. It's who you are.
Yeah.
It's who you are. But I do want to say great job to those organizations that are out there.
Yeah.
Leaders that are out there that are saying, you know what, you are who you are. We recognize that, and we're here for you. We care for you. We're going to acknowledge this. And ultimately, a better you makes a better member of this company, and a better member of this company makes the company even better. Right. So when we have good people that are doing well, feeling well, showing up well, the company profit is going to be well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. And normalizing this is important because all of us, including leaders, face anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, there's as much as there's no separation between life and work, there's no separation between anxiety and the leader. No. You know, leadership is going to have uncertainties. It's going to have the realities of the stressors and the weight of what it means to be a leader. And I think the key is, as you were talking about, the self-awareness, ensuring that you're doing what needs to be done for you to be productive for your own self and your own self-care. And then lastly, I just want to encourage everyone, get a spotter, man. You know, when we go into the gym, you know, and I put that weight on that bench, and I know there's a lot of weight that I'm going to be lifting. I always look for a spotter first, man.
Yeah.
I never go into lifting heavy weight without a spotter. That's how you get injured.
Yeah.
So, you know, I appreciate you, George, being a spotter. You know what I'm saying? And there's times where we breathe together. There's times that you check in on me, and there's times that I can talk about my anxiety and what I'm facing, and just find your spotter. You know what I'm saying? Find the person that as you're leading and the weight, you know, you're going to carry heavier weight that day. Find your spotter.
That's important. That's so good.
Yeah.
If you don't have a spotter,
reach out to one,
reach out to somebody that you feel like they can help you deal with the weight.
I think we'd be surprised if we look around. There are people in our lives that do care about us.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just recognizing that and being open to saying, hey, I don't have everything together and I need some help.
Yeah.
And reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Think about it, man.
That's important.
Yeah. I mean, if you know the weight's too big, it's stupid not to have a spotter, man.
Yeah.
It's dumb.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense not to ask somebody for help.
Don't waste the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait on you.
Yeah. When I got up to 3 plates at 315, and then there would, I'll end with this. I was working out with a guy that was like 70 years old, man. And he would put 450 pounds on the bench, 450. But he would have 2 guys on either side of the weight, but he wanted me to feel the weight.
Yeah.
Anyway, once you feel that weight, you just have to make sure you're not feeling weight that if the weight is too great, then you reach out for help. Yeah. And don't wait until it's too late, man. Don't wait until the weight is too great.
Yeah, that's good. I thought you were going to come out with a song like,
nah.
Oh my God. As we talk about this subject, it's a serious subject to us and it matters to us. We want to encourage everybody that if you are, as Ryan said, dealing with anxiety, especially while you're leading or you got employees or team members that are dealing with anxiety, help them with the weight before it gets too great.
Yeah.
Because if it gets too great, then it may be too late.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, and that's why we're checking in with people. We're making
always
sure
check
they're
in.
okay. Yeah.
Always check in. Appreciate you, Ryan, man. I love you, man. I'm excited. We're about to get on the road to Louisville and hang out with some great leaders of the Zealandia Holding Company, doing a keynote and a workshop together. Yeah. So we're excited about that. We want to thank everybody for watching and listening to us today on Champion Your Culture, the podcast, sponsored by Culture Good. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen.
We love you. We'll see you back next week on Champion Your Culture. Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us on Champion Your Culture podcast today.
We're so excited that you're here and want to invite you to connect with us. You can watch the show weekly on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn, and listen anywhere you get podcasts.
Subscribe today to get new relevant content each week on how to champion yourself and your team. Thanks again for listening to Champion Your Culture.